Welcome back to the Simply His Coffee Shop. If you missed last week, please go back and watch it. It was a powerful show with Deb Ford, our sweet, sweet friend that's here today with us again. We were talking about faithfulness and some of her testimony of how she came out of addiction and how she has turned all of that into helping others that
Ministry.
have that in ministry.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you did miss that, please go back in the archives and watch it. It's a powerful show. And a lot of people that have loved ones that have addiction, it's very uplifting. So please go back and watch that. But she is back today. We're going to be talking about caregiving because she was able to take care of her ailing father. And as many of you know, that in itself is a whole ministry.
Yeah.
That is so hard, but you do it out of love because you want to give that person the best life possible in their end stages. So, Deb, go ahead and start sharing with us about what that was like for you with having to deal with your father, because even in last week, you were saying that he did the best that he could when you were a child, and there was a lot of trauma. So how did knowing some of that, and had you forgiven him in order to take over and take care of him, that a lot of people struggle with that.
Yes. Yeah. And I would never tell someone to move your parent or your elderly family member. I would never say that that is the course you should take to move them in with you, because every case is so different. Every relationship is so different.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like I've said a million times, caregiving is not for the faint of heart.
No.
Right.
God gives you enough grace for every day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because-
just that day.
Sometimes
Minute by minute.
that second.
Half a day.
My dad was
A challenge.
full of something and something. But God gives you just what you need in that
Right.
moment. Like I had said last week, I was raised in a Christian home.
Mm-hmm.
My dad had, I believe, undiagnosed mental illness. My dad was born in 1937. So if you're being raised in the 50s, you're not 40s and 50s. Therapy is not a thing.
Right. It's
Right.
not even talked about.
Even the 60s, 70s, and 80s, maybe 80s, it was coming
Started,
around.
yeah.
But especially, and I hate this, especially for a man.
Yes,
Yeah.
especially for the men. You had to be strong men.
Absolutely.
There was so
No
much,
emotions.
Yeah.
exactly, there was so much stigma attached, especially men from my dad's generation,
Right.
Yes.
attached with admitting that you couldn't do something.
Right.
Right.
Or that you
Needed
were
help.
exactly.
Yeah. What the heck?
And our family, we just didn't ask for help, period.
Right.
Right.
So it would not have even been on his radar to think that he had a mental illness.
Right.
I think that he had obsessive compulsive.
Wait, you think?
Well-
so Ken Ford, Toby and I helped with, after her mom passed, we helped with cleaning out the house.
Right.
Ken Ford, if you get a pizza box from Domino's, you just go put it in the trash, right? If it's empty. Ken,
no.
No. Ken Ford, Toby did this to me the other day because I did something and I undid a box. It was my protein shakes. And I undid the box and I folded it and he went, okay, Ken.
Exactly.
He would fold up a box like origami style to where take a large pizza box and make it into a small square.
Mind you, he was blind and deaf. He had a cochlear implant, but he was blind. He had measles set in his eyes when he was 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
So he was supposed to be blind by the time he was in his teens. And he shouldn't have drove, up till his mid 40s.
Oh, wow.
And so I also, now as an adult looking back, he owned a business.
Yeah.
I grew
Optical
up,
business.
he owned
Wow.
Springfield Optical.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Him and my mother. And she was a saint.
She was a saint.
Absolutely. My mother, side note, my mother said that she never remembered hearing her mother say, I love you to her. So she decided that when she had her children, they would always know
Yeah.
that she loved them.
loved
And
them.
she did.
That's
Every
awesome.
day we heard that she loved us multiple times a day.
She's sweet.
And she was a giver. So to my dad's, I've got to hold on to everything.
The spectrum.
Because I come from Depression era, and
when she,
and they had a grocery store in their basement, literally
everything. Like Ken, when we went to help clean the basement out, this is no joke. He had receipts from like the 50s and 60s, and he couldn't see like every receipt for everything he bought in the office, copy paper or pens or pencils, all of that. And so we're going through some of this stuff, and to me, it's comical. I mean, we're laughing about it, obviously. And, you know, Ken can't see anything. And I come across something for a chair. Yeah, I bought that in 19th and that chair was $59.63. He knew exactly what he spent to the penny on everything. Toby and I were like, it's like savant-ish.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was crazy.
Photographic memory type thing.
It was crazy. He had kept everything. There were like, I think I still have like the vintage safety goggles, the safety eyewear, your PPE. And I also have a so cool pair of 1960s era, like the first Ray-Bans from their optical store.
Very cool.
That's what I got blessed with helping clean out the grocery store in the basement.
That's what you got.
I don't think he knew about those little deposits into your.
We don't. He didn't need to know. He didn't need to know.
No, he most definitely did not. And I'll touch on that later also in the story.
Sure.
But with regards to the trauma growing up, my dad was very, very controlling.
Okay.
He was very demonstrative. In my house, you walked on eggshells. If he was not happy, then no one was happy in the house.
Right.
He spanked me until I was 8 years old, until my sister stepped in, Melinda, and said, "You will not beat her the way that you beat me."
So it was not just a spanking. It was
more of a
brutal.
It was, I remember her waiting on the front steps of our house one day for me to walk home. And I remember her asking me, "You didn't show anybody at school the bruises," something along those lines. And I said, "No." And she said, "You can't show them because we'll get taken away." And I
my goodness.
I didn't know what taken away meant,
Right.
but I had been jumping on the bed, and I had fallen off the bed and knocked into the accordion doors that,
Like closet doors?
yes, closet doors. And one of them had gotten off track, and he had a hard time putting it back on track. And so he spanked me, but he would say, "Stand still," and I don't stand still. Well, I do now, but back then I didn't stand still for anything.
Well, you're a little girl, so I mean,
Yeah.
what?
I was
You don't stand
6.
still.
And I remember it was all along my legs and hips and up my back. But here's the thing that you don't realize as a child. You really think that everybody's family is
That
like
way.
your family.
Yes,
It's the normal.
absolutely.
Yes.
It's normal.
Right.
And so when you go to your friends' homes and you see how their dads are, I really just assumed, because my dad only turned it on when other people were away.
Right.
He didn't except for his family. I always got spankings when we would have family get-togethers with his family. And I can see what that was for now. I think he always wanted to give the view of he was the big man.
Right.
Right.
And he was the one in control of his family. And his kids were not going to get out of line because if they did, I'll show you who's boss. And you know, what's so weird? I mean, in high school, I hated him. I did not have the love of Jesus in my heart. I had strong hatred for him. And I'll never forget being 19 years old. I was in college, and I had taken out a loan from college. Not recommended. Don't do this. over and above what my schooling was for, to buy a 67 Ford Mustang. It had been my cousin's. My uncle had built the engine. I paid $2,000. Can you imagine?
I would write that check all day.
It was red. It was beautiful.
Wow.
It had dual exhaust. It was it was lovely, except it had no air, so you literally fried. But
Yeah.
anyway, I worked for them. I worked in their optical business. They owned Springfield Optical growing up. And on that day, we were going to have church pictures, and we got in a horrible, horrible fight. And he tried to take my keys away. And here I am, 19 years old, and in his business, nobody's in there, thank the Lord. And he is screaming and yelling and pushing and trying to grab the keys. And I pushed him down on the ground. And I grabbed my keys while he was down trying to get up. And I left. I went to my sister's job. She was working at Baptist Bible Fellowship back then. And my mom called over there to see if I was there. I don't remember everything that was said, but I do know that at the appointed time that evening, we all gathered together at the church and we took a family photo.
Oh, wow.
And in that family photo, I was wearing black and white and polka dots. I like polka dots. And the rest of my family was wearing blue. Different shades of blue. And I remember when I got that picture back, and I can see that picture in my mind's eye. And every time I would see that picture, I would think about what that day was and what led up to that.
Right.
Sure.
But that right there is a beautiful picture of my upbringing. You dress everything up nice and shiny.
Polish the turd.
And you go to church and you put on that face. And my dad had charisma. I know I get many, many traits from my father. He could schmooze.
He was a salesman.
Oh,
yeah.
yes, he was.
Yeah.
And he
Doc
would talk
Huntress
about
talked
God.
that. Yeah.
He would talk about God all the time. And many, many people through the years would say, your dad, you must love having your dad around. He is such a great guy. And I would always have the same answer. You don't live with him.
Yeah.
And I would say it in a joke. I learned to hone my humor
Right.
through all of that. I did have rage tendencies. They manifested later in my life where I would just rage and lose my temper. But for the most part, I learned to laugh about things, be self-deprecating.
Yeah.
Right.
But another thing that I also learned, which I didn't know it was bad until I went through therapy, was that he would cause a scene after church on Sundays in the restaurant, and we would get up and he would storm out, and I would go behind him and apologize to all the people, the waitress, the cook, the families that he disrupted their day. I was taking on his sin
Yeah.
as mine.
Trying to atone for.
Right.
Can you say codependency?
Yeah, a little bit. Implicate.
But that's how I was raised. That's what I was raised to do. But I'll tell you, even in all of that, I still had a love for my father.
Well, of course.
He was my father. It created a chasm, however, between the definition of my heavenly father
Right.
and my earthly father.
Sure.
Right.
I couldn't get there for many years. There was a stopgap. I couldn't cross that bridge.
Yeah.
I didn't know how. I knew that there was another side to it, but I didn't know how. Later on, when I had my addiction, went through my addiction and come out of it, I had a special sweet time with my dad for a couple of years. I planned my Thursday. Funny, things happen on Thursdays.
Right.
I planned my Thursday classes to revolve around my mother getting her hair done every Thursday. We would meet for lunch, me, Melinda, my sister, my mom and dad. And then I would take my dad on special little trips. And I learned to love those. We would go to wherever I didn't want him dragging my mom to. I would take him.
Gotcha.
She got to be away from him for a little while because she was in her season of caregiving for a completely and totally dependent individual. And man, did she care for him.
Right.
We had no clue no clue
Right.
how much she was caring for him until she had passed.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
No idea. Setting out clothes every day. I
Yeah.
mean, every little jot and tittle she was doing for him.
Right. Probably not something she just advertised because she just did it.
It's
'cause
just
it
was-
became the norm
Yes.
for her.
Yes. And we wondered why she would lose her temper with him.
I remember, I can't remember where you guys were. Had taken him on vacation.
Oh,
The donuts.
oh no. Oh Lord, that was, oh yes. No. As grown adults, he told us to go into this, me and Melinda, to go in and get the donuts at the end of the
Continental breakfast.
continental breakfast. He said, we went and got our donuts. Now we need you to go get the donuts. And I was like a third of what I am sitting here today. And I'm like, I don't want the donuts, Dad, but you need to go get the box of donuts. So Melinda and I walk in and we sit there for a little bit. And I'm like, I don't want the dadgum donuts. And she's like, I don't either. So what do we do? So we walked out and I said, no, I didn't get your donuts. If you didn't get enough for yourself, too bad.
Oh my! She called me and she's like, "Is it a felony if I tie this old man to a road sign and leave him here?"
That is the story I thought you were going to bring up. And that's the story that doesn't paint me in a good light. And Sharice was laughing so hard. I'm like, I'm about to stop this vehicle and tie him to a sign and drive away.
I'm like, I've got bail money. It's fine.
Yes, please. So during those times when I would have afternoons with him,
Yeah.
we had a precious, precious day one time. It happened at 84 Lumber parking lot on West Chestnut.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And we sat there and we had a heart-to-heart discussion.
I love that.
And he said the words to me, I'm sorry I was never the dad you needed me to be.
Oh, wow.
I'm the only one he said that to.
Out of 3 girls.
I wish, I'm the youngest.
Yeah.
I wish so badly he would have said that to my sisters.
Yeah.
Because I was able to get a closure
Right.
that they were not able to get.
Yeah.
And that breaks I'm no more worthy of that than they are. So that really breaks my heart.
Right.
I wish they would have.
But
But-
weren't you the one that went around and took blame for his wrongdoings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one who collected his sin, as you put it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
True.
I think probably you needed it worse than the other two. Just saying.
Maybe. But I'll tell you, that opened up a door to heaven.
Yeah.
It really did. That was the beginning of knowing that it's okay to love him, flaws and all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He did the best he knew how to do.
Right.
He didn't do how I wished he would have.
Right.
But he did teach me valuable things. He taught me when I needed to know church was important. He taught me, him and my mother. She doesn't get enough credit.
Oh, gosh.
Dorothy, let me just tell you, she was a little spitfire about this big.
About that big around.
Little Irish spitfire. And she also put Ken in his place.
I would love to see that.
Yes, she was.
Oh my gosh.
I can't even say the word that she would say. It wasn't a bad word, but she would say, Ken, I don't know. And she'd say it in a certain way that just made you laugh. She would, and he knew that was it. Stop for that moment.
Yep.
He knew that was her
That
limit.
was her limit. That's
Yes, she had reached her limit. But I was 39 years old, and Sharice, her father at that time, owned
You still got it. Yeah.
owned a
limo
limo business. And Sharice decided to treat me and my sister Melinda. My birthday is on the 17th of December. Hers is on the 18th. And then our older sister is on December 25th. So I always say my parents loved spring.
Yeah.
But anyway, she had decided to rent a limo for us. And her and Toby took us met at her house, took us to Branson, to the Outback,
Yep.
treated us to a lovely dinner. And it was on that ride back home
Got the phone call.
that we got a phone call that my dad was frantic and my mother had fallen, and she was sitting in a chair and not breathing well. And so he wanted us to come there. And so we drove from Cape Fear to Ozark.
A high rate of
And
speed.
it was, yes, a very high rate of speed. And we got there, and she was, I can still see her sitting in her chair. And she was just very quiet, very still. And we said, you need to go to the hospital. That's it. You need to go to the hospital. No, I don't want to go. I wish we would have taken her that
Call
night.
the ambulance or something, just to...
But we didn't.
You honored her wishes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll never forget, she had fallen in the bathroom, and she had a mess around the toilet. I'll just say that. And my mom was such a proud woman. I went for years thinking that she always wore her makeup. I did not know that she took it off at night. I'm not kidding. She
was a proper.
When she came out of that
Head to
bedroom in the
toe.
morning,
Head to toe.
and she had matching jewelry. My mother would love what I've turned out to be. She always dressed to the nines and looked ever the beauty. My mom I think she was just gorgeous, but she was so embarrassed that she had that happen. So we took her to the hospital the next day, and she was talking. She could get up and walk around. She ate her food tray. That was on December 18th. She ate her food tray. Everything was going fine, but they decided to admit her. They found out the next day that she had a heart attack when she fell. She'd had a heart attack years earlier, but she had quit smoking. She had stopped all the risk factors.
Right.
And really, that's the only risk factor my mother had. She was a brittle diabetic. She followed all the rules, basically. Once they retired, she followed every, guideline for her dietary needs. So the 19th, she was doing okay. And then on the 20th, she took a turn and became unresponsive. She wasn't talking. We had done the necessary paperwork. I was the medical proxy for my dad. Melinda was for my mom. But of course, with my dad still living, we would do whatever his wishes were.
Sure.
And that was back in the day when your family doctor came to the hospital and talked with you there.
Right.
And Dr. Elizabeth Stobie, was amazing. Loved my mother and my father, loved us girls too. And she came to the hospital, and she had a discussion with us about putting in a feeding tube. And so we decided to wait until the next day, the 21st, to decide if we were going to move towards that. Unbeknownst to me, I don't really know why none of us stayed with her that night. I don't know why, but we felt like we needed to be with our dad. And Melinda and I had gone. Melinda's my best friend, my sister, my partner in crime. And we had gone in at different times and whispered in my mom's ear and said, "It's okay. We're going to be okay. You can go." Didn't know that until after the fact that we both had told her. And we got a call about 11 o'clock the next morning. And she was gone. And I was in Ozark, not very far, really. But Charisse was in Nixa, and she must have driven.
I got there before you did.
She got there upstairs on the floor
Yeah.
before and met me right there at the elevator. And it was no girl should lose their hero, And my hero was my mom. I didn't know how to do life without her.
Yeah.
But in that moment, it was acutely aware to both me and Melinda that our dad was blind and deaf.
Right.
And he had to have been scared.
Sure.
I don't know. I never talked to him about how he felt in that moment, but he had to be scared because his whole world just died.
Yeah.
Right.
The center of his universe here
Well,
on
his
earth.
caretaker.
Yes, had
Yeah.
died. And sitting in that waiting room, we made a promise to him that he would live with us. We didn't know what that would look like at the time.
Right.
That promise went through numerous iterations, let me just tell you. My father wanted us to live in Ozark in the beautiful house that he had been the general contractor for in 1976. It was expertly built. Both of my grandparents, my grandpas, had been carpenters.
Gotcha.
And so my dad, literally blind, built my sister a 6-foot beautiful bookshelf and knew exactly the cuts. I didn't know this until later. He had a scholarship to be architect design that he could have gone to after high school. He was that good. And so he built this, I'm going back a little bit in the story, built this 6-foot bookshelf knowing exactly the cuts for Lowe's to make to waste no wood. And so his mind was just capable of so many things.
It was savant-like, literally.
Yes,
seriously.
it was. He wanted us to live in that house because it was better built than your house. That's what he said. But we were young. I was 39. My sister was, I won't tell you because she won't like that, but she was a little bit older than me. We still had full-time jobs.
Right.
We could not.
And you just recently got in your house. It's not like you just recently got in your house.
Yes.
It wasn't like.
We had bought our house in 2004.
Yeah.
We had like normal, most people.
Right.
We had a 30-year note. We were 6 years into that, not very far.
Right.
And so we couldn't stop our lives.
Right.
Right.
Praise the Lord, I was able to take FMLA from the state of Missouri. And my aunt and I and many people that helped, my aunt Kathy and I, who is still alive, that is his sister. She's an amazing human, godly woman. She took off and time from her life and spent 6 weeks with me and Melinda on the weekends and everything, deconstructing our childhood home.
Yeah, that house, it was a hoarder's house.
And we both got sick from it, from working in the basement.
Yeah.
Actually, I would be remiss. Melinda did so much prep work for us leading up to those 6 weeks
Yeah.
that I just couldn't do. I wasn't ready yet.
It was like 40 years of stuff. That was the moment that you and I both were like, I'm never leaving my family to have to deal with this just massive amounts of things that aren't not necessary.
This hoard. We found a box. I'll just give you an example. She gave the example, but we found a box of, the lids that come off of
Contact lenses.
Well,
That one. There was
that one, but the lids that come off of dish soap that you use at your sink. Just a box crafted, like has paper. It's had paper wrapped around the box. It's very pretty.
It's a nice box.
Yes, with tons of those. For what?
You might need one,
Yeah.
So
Or
no one
17.
understands why they kept those things.
None. Parts of the basement were a grocery store.
Had it dated.
Oh, yeah.
It was dated, and he rotated it.
He rotated them.
When they bought new, it went to the back, and everything else came up front.
Well, that's
It was.
You wanted to be there in the apocalypse.
Yeah. All of the fish situation in the big freezer, that was a little sketch, but it had been in there a long time. You definitely didn't want to thaw that and eat that. But during this time, a lot of discussion was happening and a lot of negotiating was happening. It wasn't where he wanted to be. He fought it, but we didn't have any choice.
Right.
The keepers, they helped move tons of things that he just couldn't part with. The Partons helped move tons of things
With the youth group.
that his bed, Toby and Sharice brought up first of all because he needed a place to sleep.
Comfort for
so the
him
keepers
to
were
try
around
to.
the family, around neighboring
Yes.
family.
They were amazing.
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. And we're talking within a moment's notice, these people were there. See, when I first started going to Crane Christian, I knew it was special. I knew that that was my people, my tribe. And I remember even having discussions with Charisse and with Bruce about this is what's coming for all of us. This is what's coming, and this is what we're here to help with.
Yeah.
I didn't know or realize that they
would be in need.
that they were really going to be more help to me than I could ever be. He moved in with us. He moved into our home. And the first year, we didn't get to grieve our mother.
Right.
And so, and you do have a lot of people and a lot of help that first year
Right.
to be there. Toby came up one night
Oh my
and
gosh.
brought a bucket of chicken.
He did.
And Dad was,
Over the moon.
oh my gosh.
Toby
Toby this and Toby that.
So disgusting.
And Toby everything after that. Toby had reached
So
sainthood.
that bucket of chicken went a long way.
Oh, the mileage it had. And Charisse took us out, and we just had a night out with the girls. And it was such a blessing to have people that stepped in to do that, because not many people would. We tried to find help from the local church for him.
Yeah.
Right.
We reached out to his local church, and I'll not speak that because
Sure.
everybody does what they can.
Exactly.
He was a lot.
Yeah.
He,
Oh my gosh.
He ran the conversation. He couldn't hear well. He could hear me the best.
Why?
That in itself proves that God has a sense of humor right there. But he would talk a lot
Right.
and not have, it was a one-sided conversation. And you had to be okay with that. And not everybody's okay with that. So he required a lot. And because he was a man with disabilities, I would advocate for him at every turn. But really, when it came down to it, it was me and my sister.
Yeah.
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 So we got connected with a center. It's in Springfield. It's on Fort Street. And I believe it's senior aging office. And we went on a waiting list. And we were on the waiting list maybe 6 or 8 months. And then we got a case manager. And during those 6 or 8 months, we're trying to figure out how we can still go to work.
Right.
Right.
I was still working with the state of Missouri. Melinda was working at a travel agency that she was at for 20 years. But we were trying to navigate how to feed him during the daytime.
Right.
We set up special buttons on the microwave, taught him how to dial the phone with special like raised buttons on the phone and the microwave so that he could do certain things for himself. He had always folded towels for my mom. That was a job that he liked to do. He also wrapped all the Christmas presents. I hate it. He would do those things. He was good at them. He didn't need eyesight to do those
Right.
things.
Because that you can do by feel.
Yes, and so through those 6 or 8 months, we were really it was trial and error.
Yeah.
I didn't know a lot of things until later on. My sister, I worked jobs that were crazy jobs. That had crazy hours.
Yeah.
And so I might not leave home till 10:30 in the morning, but I might not get home till 10:30 at night.
Right.
Right.
And so my sister really dealt with a lot of that
Yeah.
in that early year.
Yeah.
But at the end of those 6 or 8 months, we came up to the top of the list. And we had a case manager that was Dad's case manager that came in our home. And she met with us a couple times a year to sign paperwork for him. But he was assigned a caregiver through Phoenix Home Health Care. And the Office on Aging paid for all of that.
Oh, wow.
And we met the most amazing people, but finally met Celisa. We had no clue what a bond that we were going to develop with her. She came in our home and we started private paying her. He's so hilarious. He thought we were paying her $8 an hour.
Oh, that's funny.
And we're like, sure. But she's a Christian and God brought her into our life. And I think brought us into her life.
Yeah.
Because we became friends with her. She not only cared for Dad and would do light housekeeping, but in those extra hours when we would private pay, she would take him to Brahms, or as he called Bronze, to get his favorite chocolate shake.
He's a mess.
You would tell him it was Brahms and he would still say Bronze. But anyway, get his favorite chocolate shake. He trusted her to drive his van that my mom had driven. They would go on walks and she would take pictures of him and post about him and called him Mr. Ken. And it was through that we as caregivers got to see our dad
Right.
have a great time. That was such a blessing
Oh, I'm
and
sure.
such a peace of mind. And I'll tell you, everybody talks about how the first year of things, losing a loved one, is difficult. But I don't think anybody prepares you for year 2 and 3 and thereon when everybody goes away.
Yeah.
When all those people that were there to help pick up and carry those pieces think that you should have it all back together by then.
Right.
And you don't.
I had a medical doctor tell me that I was okay to grieve up until about a year. And I'm like, really? There's a limit on this?
Right. Exactly. What the heck?
Your world continues after a year?
That's ridiculous.
There
No.
is no limit on grief.
Absolutely.
I
know.
agree
Absolutely.
1,000,000%.
No.
I know. I've talked with a couple of different other people who have like 2 and 3 and 4 years, and it's like, no. There's always the same. You just learn to navigate. You learn to manage. You learn.
Yes.
You learn that it's different, but it's never going to be the
No.
same.
Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely.
You find your new normal,
Yeah.
which you do find joy and you do find peace and you do find love in that new normal one day. But it's definitely not on a time schedule.
Right.
Right.
Ever. And especially since we weren't even grieving our mom, really.
Right. Right.
We were not even there yet.
Right.
But those years, a struggle for me and my sister. But they were beautiful, too. We figured out, don't ever be ashamed as a caregiver to need that time for you.
Right.
That's a good word.
Don't ever. Shame and guilt are useless emotions, and you need to let that go.
Right.
Because you have done, your mother, your father, your grandparent, they know you loved them. They know that. And you have to let that shame and guilt go. Because there's no room in a new life for those emotions. I
Right.
just don't believe. He was hilarious. We laughed a lot. We learned how to turn on closed caption on our TV and watch entire movies, entire series of television shows on closed caption, because you never knew when you're going to get Debbie. No one in my life calls me Debbie, really. Debbie, do you have your cellular device on you? That's code for, can you look something up for me? And then you knew you were going to get several, and this was before you could pause a show or pause something. And so you just knew you were going to miss a chunk because he needed to know something. The time went on. My dear sweet sister struggled exponentially more than I did. I think because I am just a tell it like it is.
Matter
And
of fact.
you could say whatever you wanted. I bought a brand new car, brand new, and he didn't speak to me for 3 weeks because I didn't ask his permission.
Oh.
Did you know you're supposed to do that as a grown child? No. It's because you're not. You don't have to ask their permission.
That's not the norm.
No. No. The first time I took him driving in it, He was riding, of course, not driving.
No.
He was like feeling the door, feeling everything, because that's how he
Right.
acclimated
That's what
to
he
his
saw, yeah.
world.
Right.
She rides pretty smooth. I'm sitting over there smiling. Yes, in my head thinking, yes, I know. I did a good job. Thank you. But that was just my dad. He really was more trauma. I think she reverted to a child, and she has said
Yeah.
that, not to tell too much of her story,
Sure.
but she really struggled in that area. And you could say anything you wanted to me. He could say anything. And I dealt with it. But if you hurt her, that was it. You don't hurt her.
You're going to your room.
And I told him in no uncertain terms one day, listen, old man, I'll pack you and your stuff up and sit you on the front porch and have someone come get you, because we have a peaceful home. And I'm not advocating that for anybody, but I'm just saying
That was your reality.
I had to let him know
That there
he
were
had crossed a line.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was, if she couldn't set that boundary at that moment, I was going to set that boundary.
For her, yeah.
You will not talk to her in that manner.
Right.
And probably 6 months later, my aunt and uncle, Aunt Kathy and Ari, came to visit. And the first thing when we weren't around out of his mouth was, because we were getting ready to go see an attorney. And my dad remembered that conversation from several months ago that I told him I would pack his duds and sit him in his suitcase on the front porch.
Yeah.
You'll never guess what Debbie said to me. And then lays out the story, and my aunt goes, not skipping a beat, I love her to pieces. We are definitely Fords. She said, well, what did you say to get her to say that?
Oh.
Exactly.
So, yeah, she's met him.
she's met him.
Yes. She definitely, he is older, but she has definitely met him.
Tuned in.
But I can now getting some distance, I can look back on caring for my father, and it was exactly what we were supposed to do. It was 5 years, and we went through so many funny things that I don't even have enough time to share. I mean, he was on Ambien for a while, and
Oh, my word.
we actually didn't even want to take him off it because he saw bright colors that he had never seen before.
Oh, wow.
Like, he would talk about the bright, crisp colors that he would see. And so it really did. As an adult daughter, I had to take his medication from him. I had to hide his medication because he would get up in the middle of the night and ravenously tear up a cake. We knew that Ambien Ken had been there because that cake looked like an autopsy. But I found him in the middle of the night one night on our hardwood floors, and he had fallen.
Oh, no.
And he ended up having a giant bruise on his hip, and that gave way to the conversation the next day about me getting down on his level and me talking logically to him and saying, I'm so sorry. I have to take this away from you. You cannot take these. I'm throwing this medication away. Because if you fall and break a hip, you will have to go in somewhere, and we don't want you going somewhere.
Right.
We want to take care of you.
Right.
How did he handle that?
It was, he handled it well. He really did.
Responded any positive
Yes,
manner?
he did. And let me just tell you, God's grace completely covered these years.
Absolutely.
I had been very involved in Crane Christian Church, even had led the recovery group there at the church at the time called Building Hope. There came a time where I had to back away.
Yeah.
I felt like I needed to be, it was not fair for me to get in my car on Sunday morning and drive away to Crane and leave my sister to deal with all of that. That was not fair to her.
Yeah.
There needed to be shared responsibility in that. Could we have done it a different way and me still remain at Crane? Possibly.
But in the throes of it, you
in
don't.
the middle,
Yeah.
one of my favorite phrases, you can't see the forest for the trees. The trees are so up close to you. it was a blessed time. The Royals, my dad could hear the radio. So he listened
all the time.
He listened to preaching non-stop every day in, day out.
baseball.
And baseball. God love baseball, because baseball had games almost every night. That
Praise
means
the
he
Lord.
was busy listening to games, and he didn't even want to talk about food during those games. He wanted to be left alone. We're like, praise Jesus. We are going to do something we need to do. And here's another thing too, though. We figured out a way. Our dad didn't understand needing breaks, because in his
Right.
generation, you didn't need breaks.
No, you just kept going.
Exactly. So as women, we decided we would go on women's retreats. Me and my sister went once a year. Sometimes our adopted sister Kim would go with us, and we would rent a condo wherever for 3 or 4 days. And we would take food. We might leave the condo, but probably not. And we would play games. We would read. We would sleep when we wanted to sleep. We would watch TV when we wanted to.
A little respite from
Yeah.
the situation.
He would ask question after question after mind-numbing question. I would tell him sometimes, some days, you got 20, go.
Now you're down
And
to-
once he would get
you're
done with
down
the
to
20,
15.
that's it.
No more. You get
Because
no more.
he would ask.
This is your coupons.
He would ask so many questions. Nobody asked questions during those women's retreats.
Right.
Praise the Lord.
And we would come back refreshed.
Nobody was making you take the donuts.
No, exactly. Our niece was amazing. Candy
Candace,
would come over, and she would love on him just, if not more, than we loved him.
Right.
And would just take care of him. And it was our time to refresh
Yeah.
and recuperate. And
And
then
I think so many people too, when they are taking care of others, they forget that that's such
It's a need.
big need.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even, as a mom, when you're in the throes of
Yeah.
everything, you
Yes.
still need to make that time to say, you know what, I need a little tiny break, even
Yeah.
if that's just going to get your nails done or your hair done or
I
whatever.
just need a
You
shower
don't-
by myself.
Yes, you just don't need to feel guilty about that, because that's how God made us too, is we need that time of rest.
yes,
It's your
Absolutely.
day of rest.
yes,
Even if
Absolutely.
it was only once a year,
yes.
you still took the time and you were intentional with it to say, this is going to be my time of rest,
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
to rejuvenate, to refocus. And it's so important, and you
Yeah.
shouldn't feel guilty about
No.
that.
No.
It is critical to have that time.
Absolutely.
5 years and 1 day to my mom's passing, he fell in our bathroom. And I had worked the overnight shift, because at that time I was the overnight social worker at Cox South. I had worked the overnight. I came home. Melinda said she had gotten up through the night, and he had been in the bathroom most of the night. So I think he was in a weakened state anyway. And so he fell in our bathroom. I'm a hospital social worker, people. I freak out. I don't know what to do. And so I run and get my nephew next door, who comes in and talks to them on 911, is able to reposition him, start compressions, because he had had a heart attack. He coded there in my bathroom.
Wow.
The ambulance came. They got him into the ambulance, and I said, I want him to go to Cox South. And they didn't move in my driveway for probably 30 minutes, and I was scared. I went up to the back of the ambulance, and I'm not a patient woman very often, and I beat on the back of that door, and they're like, you've got to stop. He is coding in our ambulance, so you've got to let us do our work. We get to the hospital. The doctor tells us that he has had, yes, a massive heart attack, and they're going to take him to try to do a stent. Well, then the stent, Dr. Anderson got in there and realized he couldn't do a stent. And so Dr. Steinberg, who was an amazing physician and cardiologist in Springfield, took him in and did a triple bypass. And he was in the hospital for a while. We then had to put him in a care facility. things start happening towards the end of your life,
Yeah.
your body processes, because of the medications that they give you, your body processes don't respond the way
Right.
they once had. And so his kidneys started having issues.
Yeah.
So they put him back to the hospital, where for the first time he got ICU psychosis, which is also a real thing. It's where they're not oriented because of the bells and whistles,
Right.
and
Yeah.
there's no expectation of privacy or ability to sleep in a hospital. And so they become mesmerized by all of those things,
Right.
and they lose orientation, which, can you imagine? This is a deaf
Right.
that has a cochlear implant and a blind man. I was shocked that he didn't, come down with that sooner,
Right.
but he did come out of it. God's grace, it was all through this. And he ended up going back to the care facility on hospice. We were given 6 weeks of precious, precious time. She was able to rebuild that relationship with him
Yeah.
without having to have him in her home every day.
Yeah.
Right.
To be
Yeah.
able to go home, have a reprieve. Salisa also was amazing again. We private paid to have her, and I understand not everybody can afford that. This was his money. This was not any money that we had, but we were going to use it because that's what it was there for.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We had her come in several days a week. I went after I would get off work in the morning. Candace, our niece, would come and fill those gaps in. She also worked overnights and would come and hang out with what she called hang out with G-Paw. And those weeks were precious for us
Yeah.
because what caregiving had drained us of.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I would not have done it any differently.
Right.
I would not have put him anywhere.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that choice is right for everybody.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's just not.
Yeah.
There are some people, you are more in tune with your mental health
Yeah.
Right.
than what we were,
Yeah.
Makes sense.
because stress is cumulative.
Right.
Yeah.
And some
Right.
people know that they are not built for that.
Yeah.
And that is okay.
Right.
Allow yourself that time.
Yeah.
And he also passed away when no one was there. and we had people there off and on for most of the time.
Yeah.
And our adopted sister Kim came back through and said, your parents knew, and God knew, that they needed to go in peace when you all were not around them. That was their journey. He
Right.
took them in the quiet, in the still of that room.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when I went in and saw my dad laying there in the bed, I was the only person there before everybody showed up. And I'll never forget just laying over my dad. He was still warm, and just thanking him for and thanking God for him not tarrying, because that was one thing that listen, we would have spent every dollar to keep him where he was at. He didn't want to tarry.
Not in suffering.
He wanted to go home to be with my mom.
Right.
And he was ready, and he had made statements that he didn't tell us, though. He didn't tell me, but he would tell the people that would come in that he was ready to go. He was ready to meet Jesus. And my dad can see,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
can hear, and he is talking up a storm, asking 75,000 questions all at one time, because that's what you can do in heaven. And my mother does not have a lifted shoe anymore. She can run. She does not have shortness of breath.
She's not having to take care of him.
No,
They're
he makes his own sandwich
Exactly.
and sets out his own clothes, his own priestly robes or whatever. I don't know. But it's so amazing to know that he's there with his father.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
there with my grandmother, his mother, that was an amazing woman of faith, that was a prayer warrior, but liked to gossip on the side. I mean, he's there with them. I look at my life now. I'm 52. I'm I'm looking at where I stand in my life, not married, not with children, but also helping to raise others.
Right.
And it just gives you a heart, a pressure for those that will come after you.
Yeah.
To know Jesus,
Yeah.
to love him. Like, I pulled into work one day just crying out to God and just saying, you're my daddy. You're my daddy. I never had a daddy that I called daddy. You're my daddy. And to know that to the fullest now
Right.
Absolutely.
is just amazing. So that's my caregiver journey.
This ministry that you founded called Building Hope.
Yes.
And I just wanted to make sure two things. One, that the listening audience and the watching audience understands that ministry is still thriving, even though you are not there to see it through, because God took you on a different journey, which was extremely important as well. But that there are people that are now managing this ministry that you began. But the foundation that you had built was strong enough that it has sustained you being removed. And I wanted you to, you had made a statement that you felt you maybe didn't give quite enough, and I think you did.
Absolutely.
I think you did, and the reason that I know
Absolutely.
that is because it still stands.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I really wanted that to be made a fact, because if there are people out there that are maybe in the midst of trying to build something and maybe they're being pulled a different way for whatever reason,
Right.
they need to understand that sometimes that can happen, but to give it to God and let God sustain it.
I've got a picture that I had texted her back in March when I came through in the parking lot, how full it was, and so that she saw, of the seeds that she planted faithfully
Yes.
and showed up on nights when the parking lot was not,
Yes.
it was completely crickets.
Yeah.
Wanted her to see, her faithfulness and how far it's gotten.
The other thing that I would say about that is, as you were talking about the times you showed up and no one was there, or maybe there was one person,
Right.
it made me immediately jump back into my past, where my husband and I, early in our very first stages of being saved, we went to this little church where there was a very on fire Sunday school teacher for the young adults. And we were often the only two that were there. But she would teach that morning as if there was 100 million people,
Yeah.
with the exuberance and the enthusiasm and the anointing of the Holy Spirit, that we walked out feeling, man, we was at this banquet all by ourselves. So the opposite, thinking that there was nobody there for you, or maybe there was only one, God can do a whole lot with just that one,
Yeah.
person. So you never know whose lives you may have touched and then they touched.
Absolutely.
You don't even know where that's going to go until you get to where your dad is now.
Yes.
And you
That's
can talk
true.
and ask your 75 million questions.
Exactly. Well, and the irony of it, really, that's God,
Yeah.
that Sean was a member of that group in its infancy, and then post his death, his mother
His
is
mom
the one.
is the one that the baton has been passed to. She
Yeah.
leads that group.
So we need to have Mom on.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll get a hold of Mary.
Because
With her.
that, I mean,
Yeah.
I couldn't have planned that better.
Oh,
God
right.
planned that.
Absolutely.
He knew that from the beginning.
So
Yeah.
you were a stepping stone to
Yeah.
that ministry that God wanted to see happen.
Well, and the picture on the old shirt was of a person reaching up, putting a block up on the word of hope to build that. It was all about building hope,
Yeah.
giving hope to people
Yeah.
in a season where they didn't have hope. And on those nights when it was just one, I was able, which I work better really one-on-one, and I was able to speak hope and life into that one person. I know one other than Sean, one has since passed, but that's what was necessary, I
Right.
guess, for that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for such a time as this.
Yes.
And it became kind of, Bruce's mantra for our church still. He rides motorcycle, and, we pray for 100-mile radius around us Endle, Arkansas, and up here. And it became, our mantra at church. At church, what we do is we give hope, we provide help, and we give them a home. Because there's a lot of individuals that, if you walked into our church today, there's a lot of people that can't go to the Shiny Church. They're not accepted at Shiny Church.
Yeah.
And that's, we want you warts and all. And that's a place of ministry that's, that's Bruce and Kim's heart.
Yes.
Obviously.
Well, he used to always say, I have just got to the emergency room before you,
Yeah.
and I know enough to show you where the bathrooms are.
Yeah, exactly.
And also he would say, which I use this all the time in talking with people, that church is here for the people that can't keep their cheese on their cracker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have days like that where you just can't get it all together.
Absolutely.
But that church, although it's Crane Christian Church, was the most non-denominational church I think I've ever been at.
Yeah.
Such a melting pot of individuals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was such a precious time
Yeah.
in my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we've always referred to Crane Christian Church and Bruce's ministry as a hospital.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's where a lot of hurting and broken people go to find healing.
Yes.
Yes.
And
For sure.
that's so needed, because then it can maybe get them to a place where then they're not as jaded by the church.
Right.
Yes.
And then they can get healed.
Yep.
That's such a huge thing. So we've
Absolutely.
always referred to that church as a hospital.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
It is.
For sure. Absolutely.
And that's much needed. And well, thank you so much, Deb, for coming today. We really have appreciated you sharing with us the last 2 weeks about your testimony and what
Yes.
you've gone through, and then how you've dealt with your dad and everything. And we just really appreciate you coming and sharing with us. It's been amazing to hear all of it, because I don't think I even knew some of that. I knew some of it, but I didn't know all of it. So it's been powerful, and I think everybody has enjoyed that. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you did miss last week again, go back and watch it. It was a powerful show. Thank you again. We'll see you next week in the Simply His Coffee Shop.